Let us try to understand the importance of a load balance here. The reason is because in your industry or in the organization where you're working, it's just not one virtual machine. We would look at there would be we'll be having n number of machines in our organization, and all this n number of machines would be running specifically a workload like a application or a web application, whatever it is. Now, the request has to end of the day reach to those machines, and if it is it would have been a smaller if would have been just one machine, then we would have been needed one public IP address, because when we want to receive requests from internet, then we need to have a public IP facing which is connected to internet end of the day. Now, when you have n number of machines, so do you actually really have n number of public IPs? Then how will you go and register your domain name? When I say domain name, the website.com, anything, how feasible it is for every user to be aware of each of the public IP addresses of that machine? Instead, you go and type google.com or facebook.com or Swiggy and all that, but you don't go and specifically say this is the IP address of that machine and everything. That's not how you remember that server, right? We remember by names. And how is a name can be linked to only how can it be linked to multiple public IPs? So instead, we will have, it's not recommended solution to have multiple public IPs facing and all that. Instead, we'll have a single facing IP, and that one will try to be forwarding that request to these machines. We have NAT specifically to help with it, network address translator, who can help with one public IP and all that. But still, it doesn't actually serve the purpose of alone solving one public IP, because we have one more thing is will receive n number of requests, and we don't want that request to be only going to one machine. Okay, instead we wanted to be balancing the that entire traffic between all the machines which are existing in that which is running that specific workload. Now, Azure is providing a solution called Load Balancer, which can balance the traffic which you are receiving to a specific set of machines which you wanted to route that request to. So let's understand the architecture here, which we can actually see. And now what we are seeing here is the requests which are generated from internet. And when I say internet, it's just the users, and they are sending the requests. And requests will be first received to the front end configuration. So the domain name, I can actually keep it to the front end, the config, and that's nothing but the front end IP. So I'll just have one specific IP, and that for specific IP will be registered to the domain name, and I'll receive the request end of the day to this front end configuration, and based on what type of request and everything, I can route it to the specific set of machines. So here, if you see, there is a backend pool. Now you can configure in your load balancer uh, what type of request should be going to which machines. So there would be HTTP requests, there might be HTTPS requests, there might be SSH requests and all that. Now based on that, which specific backend pool you wanted to route and all that, you can configure in backend pool, and even you can configure just that, not that alone. uh, you can use uh, the NAT rules in load balancer, but we'll get to that. But the way the routing based on what type of request from what port and everything will happen based on load balancing rule. So once the request comes to the load balancer, it comes through the front end IP config. And once the request comes, there'll be a load balancing rules. So it will analyze what was the request, is it from which port and all that, and what rules you have configured. If I'm getting a request from so and so ports of specific IP address and all that, I would like to route the rules to a specific backend pool or to the so and so port in the backend pool of machines. And pool is nothing but a set of machines which you have configured in that backend pool. And so the load balancing rule which you have configured, you're saying that so and so request coming from so and so port, I want it to be routed to so and so port of a backend pool. So that's how load balancing rules will be configured. And similarly, there is load balancing rule 2. This is rule 1, which will with of specific 80 port requests, if they are coming of specific IP address, then I would like it to be routed to backend pool of 80 port, and that one pool 1 of 80 port, and automatically the request will be routed that way. If I'm receiving it from 443, then I would like it to be routed to 443 port of backend pool 2, and that's how the requests which are coming in from 80 port and 443. What does that do? 80 port is HTTP is 80 port. HTTPS is 443. Okay, so this is how they load. This is the load balancer. And so how, let's go and try understand in depth while we configuring a load balancer from portal. Try to configure a load balancer. How will we go and configure a load balancer? So I have set of machines and I wanted to configure it. So I'll go to portal, search for load balancer. So in Azure is providing different types of load balancing solutions. You see, when I type load balancer, this is load balancer is a service, but load balancing is a terminology like traffic load balancing is a solution. So in that there are four services which Azure is providing. One is application gateway, front door CDN profiles. One is load balancer. One is traffic manager. At this point of time, we are trying to only understand what is a load balancer. So I'll go and click on create a load balancer. I have to choose some resource group. So I'll choose C India RG as this, and the name of the load balancer is C India LP, and Central India. C India is Central India hyphen LB load balancer, and I can go for a standard, gateway, or a basic. Now I'll go and choose a basics load balancer. Okay. Now standard load balancer is what you use for the production workloads. And gateway load balancer is something new. We'll discuss about it. But basic load balancer will help in terms of handling so and so requests, so much amount, this many number of requests and everything, and how many machines you can add in a backend pool. All will be a limited set of things. When I say limited, it will be close to some hundreds to like that. Whereas a standard load balancer can actually accommodate in their backend pools some huge number of machines in a backend pool. And as of now, I'm going with a basic load balancer. And whether do you wanted a public facing or a internal facing load balancer? What is a public facing load balancer and internal facing load balancer? So public facing load balancer means you are getting requests from internet. The front end configuration, the IP, a single configuration for all these machines, IP configuration was will be if it's a public, it's connected to internet, then that is a public facing load balancer. No, if you are just balancing, you're using a load balancer only for internal usage and everything, then you have an internal load balancer. So let me show you one pic where this is one example for a public load facing load balancer. I'll try to show another architecture view, which is a uh, what do you say, which is a internal facing load balancer. So now if you see here in this architecture, we are receiving requests from internet, but this is an the load balancing solution which I'm using is an application gateway. If we go into that load balancing solutions, I have uh, the load balancing solutions. So one of the solution which we have is application gateway. Okay, so because of a broader functionality, we'll use application gateway, but internally, this is inside Azure VNet. So inside Azure, you have your own virtual network. Inside your own virtual network, you have this is the front end machines which will take care of all the web service, web requests and everything. And this is the business logic servers, the application servers, where the entire set of logical from your HTTP pages, HTML pages, whatever data is coming back in terms of registration forms or specific computation which has to happen, that will happen all the business logic. So even these are all set of machines. So the requests are coming from all these requests. They have to be segregated among all these machines, just like the way the requests are coming from internet and they are being segregated uh, to the set of machines similarly. So this load balancer, as it is used inside a virtual network, and this front end configuration IP is inside the VNet. It's not outside connected to public. If it's inside only for this set of machines and everything, then the front end configuration, when it is a private IP, then that is called an internal load balancer. And as of now, as I'm going for a basic one, I am not having the option of choosing global I just have an option of selecting regional alone. But when I go with the global and I can actually and public, I have the solution here for a global point of view, and it makes sense. Uh, so here I go configure basic load balancer with a regional load balancer of public. We know to get into as of not here. Global is helps in terms of being or IP being available across the world in a faster process to give you more faster solution. Now when I try to create a load balancer, if you see, first thing which I have to create is a front end configuration IP. If from some facing IP, either it's an internal IP, private IP or a public IP, I just have to create a first and front end configuration. So that's what you see front end IP configuration here. So I'm going and creating a public load balancer, right? Public IP. If you see, it's a public one. So I'll create a public IP. So C India LB PIP. Public PIP means public IP address, and um, I'll just say front end here, and the IP here I'll just name it as C India PIP, and this is a dynamic one, and this is a basic SKU load balance public IP, and it is for a regional point of view. Okay, and I'm clicking, so I'm creating a public IP, and then what do we have as per diagrams? We have a backend pool. We are going to configure a backend pool here. So I'm just going to give an pool name, or I'll just give B pool O1, and which virtual network I don't have a virtual network here as of now. I'll just create a pool, uh, and I'll go for load balancing rule. Load balancing rule will take request and will traverse that from uh, front end IP to this one. So here I'll just say HTTP rule and IPv4 version. So if when I'm getting request from the front end so and so IP, I want you to send it to backend pool. Okay, when you're receiving requests, okay, from 80 port, you are receiving request from 80 port. 80 port is HTTP. Then you send it to 80 port of these machines. Which of the 80? The backend pool. The set of the even the machines will have ports, right? So you're sending it to 80 port of that machines. And one more thing I missed to mention is health probe. Now, when the requests are being sent to the machines, load balancer will only send the requests to machines which are healthy. Suppose you're sending requests and some servers are not working in that backend pool properly. The requests when they are sent to that machine when that is not working, then what happens? The request will be lost. So instead, it will only load balancer will send request only to machines which are healthy, and that one the load balancer will use health probe technology, one specific feature which will go and check its health probe will be configured in a load balancer, and it is only job is to go and check. It is going to probe is a naming convention, so it will only go and search for whether that machine is healthy or not. If it is actually the probe request has been successful, then it terms that that machine is working. If that probe request has been failed, then it terms that that machine is not working properly. So the request will be accordingly will be sent only to healthy instances, and unhealthy instances will be kept aside, and the request will not be sent to those machines. So that's how load balancer will take care. Now here when I'm sending that this so and so, it wants us to go and create a health probe. So I'm going to create the pool O1 health probe. I wanted to send it an HTTP to an 80 port. So when it has to send a probe request, na, it's going to send it in 80 port and check whether that is, if that request comes, it will be fine. For every 5 seconds, it will go and check. And do you want session persistence? What is session persistence? Okay, so when requests are coming, right? The requests are coming from user and it is going to this. There are 100 machines. Now you sent a request, your Google request, and it has received it. Now first it will ask for authentication, saying that please sign in your account, and you signed into your account from, and that sent a response back what you are looking for in that Gmail account. Now another request has sent. If you don't have a session persistence, the request in when you send another request after that, it might go to this machine or it might go to that another 99 machines which are there in the backend pool. Now if it goes to another set of machines, then it will again ask you for login, and after you logged in again it will send back the response for whatever you're looking for. And you if you're sending like that 100 requests, if you don't have session persistence, then it might go to 100 different machines, and then it will keep asking you every time to log in. So do you understand the difficulty of if you don't have a session persistence, how difficult it is for every time to keep login for every request which you're sending to the server? So if you have a session persistence, so the machines will remember that, oh, so based on client IP and protocol, you wanted to remember session persistence. Okay, so then the request will only be sent to that some specific server only. So in this way, you can avoid authentication or losing your data and all that. Specific cache data. So it will be very faster and everything. So cache will be stored in yours and even with the server. So it will be helpful in terms of session persistence in that way. So here I'm choosing none at this point of time. We no need to have that floating IP and all this are like beyond the concepts at this point of time. I'll just click on add. The rest of the concepts we'll try to deal in the networking section. And then I have outbound rules. I can go and configure an outbound rule if I'm looking for. At this point of time, I'm not configuring any outbound rules. And let me go and click on create. So a load balancer is getting created and it got created. And if I go into a load balancer, now what I would see is a front-end IP configuration, which is nothing but one IP facing for internet or for the internal inside the virtual VNet and everything. And after that, what you are seeing here is backend pools. Backend pools is nothing but the set of pools which you are seeing here. Sorry, this is a backend pool and the machines. So you can add your machines in each of this pool. If I go into each of this backend pool, I can go specifically search for which virtual network and I can keep adding requests machines all from that specific network into this pool 01. Similarly, I have health probes. I can create health probes and health probes are used for finding out which are the healthy instances in a backend pool and so that the request will only be routed to that specific healthy instances. The unhealthy instances will be kept aside, which will not, so the request will not be sent to that machines. And load balancing rules are the ones where you write a rule saying that okay, if I am getting request from front end IP, I wanted to send it to so and so specific backend pool. If it is receiving so from so and so port, then send it to so and so port of that backend pool machines, so that you can actually do it from load balancing rule. And inbound NAT rules, you can use your load balancer to connect to specific machines. So when usually we use NAT rules to connect to specific machines in your arcade in your network. So you can SSH and RDP using this NAT rule. So that's one good one which we internally use uh, for our mission when we wanted to connect to our admin stations and everything. We configure a NAT rule, and that this load balancer will help in terms of connecting to specific port of a machine. So right now at this example point of view, we are not looking of how a load balancer NAT rule works, but we wanted to route the request to this respective pools. So let me go and create some set of machines and we can add it to a backend pool and we can actually get the request. So let us understand how can we add a load machine to a load balancer. One way is we can create this machine, and while we are creating a virtual machine, we'll go into networking section, and in this networking session, first we have to be in that specific region. I mean that specific region, and then I am right now here. You will find an option called place your machine in a load balancing solution. So you can place it in an application gateway or Azure Load Balancer. I'm using an Azure Load Balancer. Then I am selecting here a load balancer, which is C India. Because I'm in that specific region, I'm able to find this load balancer. Otherwise, you will not be able to find it. And next thing here is you need to have a public facing for this machine. It is just the load balancer will take care of it. And I'll go and create this machine. But I wanted to send a request. So I wanted to actually first configure a website in this uh, what do you say, in this virtual machine. So let me go and I'm creating a public IP for that so that I can able to log into that machine and create a host a website. So in one machine I'll host a Apache, in one machine I'll host Nginx. So when I'm sending requests, if it is going to one machine, then it is Apache machine. If it is going to Nginx, then it is going to be an Nginx. So that's way it is actually routing requests to from once to two machines in a backend pool. So let us create one more machine here, and I'll keep it Central India. I'll use spot instance. I'll use trainer Indian at the rate 1234567, Indian at the rate 1234567, and give the networking as an option. Here I'll just leave it as it is, and I'll select the load balancer solution here, and I'll select C India. It is in the same backend pool O1. I'll disable this option. Click on create this virtual machine. So I just wanted to review it's C India VNet, otherwise it will be a different one entirely. So everything is good. Click on create. So the Apache would have been created and I can see that. So I'll go to that machine right now and first I'll configure an Apache in that. So I am using PowerShell to connect to my, so it's deployed failed, underlying AP might have. So if I go, so the deployment got failed. So let us understand why the deployment. So this machine has failed, is using. So I'll try to recreate this one. See India. So I just clicked on redeploy when the deployment has failed. I'm going to not change nothing. I'm not changing anything here. Or I can actually, if that was failed, I can recreate it. Let me recreate because I wanted to choose the option of one. I know why it has been failed, but I don't want it to discuss at this point of time. But people who are interested, I'm just giving a one-line sentence. Uh, when I create a basic load balancer, it doesn't support uh, machine to be created in a different availability set entirely, and the machine might be should be in the same availability set point of view, otherwise a basic load balancer won't accept it, and that is where we are seeing this kind of issues. uh, so this is good. So sometimes we'll get an error. We have to try for 2 3 times so that we'll get this machine to be created. But we can reduce this kind of error when we are trying to use availability set. So usually machines which are being created for a load balancer, They will either use an availability set or an availability zone, so that if it's an availability zone, then we have to use standard load balancer. If you're placing the machines in availability zone, different zones and everything. If you're choosing availability set as an availability option, then you wouldn't face this kind of issue with a load balancer. So it's again deploy has been there. So I'll try to click on redeploy and see how it is going. Yeah, it's not working, but anyways, at least let's try logging into the Apache first. This is the public IP of this machine. And here am I inside the machine. I can actually install sudo apt update spelling name update. Then I have to do this sudo install Apache. So apt install -y Apache 2. If I go into this machine, I have to allow the HTTP request. So I go and copy this IP address. And the request should be going to Apache homepage. Now I'll remove this. I'll go to the network interface card, and I should have the public IP in an IP config. And I'll disassociate that. I'll click on save. So I'm removing the public IP of this machine. How am I removing it? If you remember yesterday video, the way we can go to a card of a machine and you can remove a public IP address of that machine. So I'm removing the public IP of this machine. Why did I keep it? So that I can actually go and install Apache in that. Now anymore this IP address will not be useful anymore, because this is not anymore connected to, it's not linked to the machine. But if I wanted to, so let's assume as per this diagram, this is Apache 01. Now I wanted the request to be the when users are sending the request, I wanted that to be going to the backend pool 01. And if you remember, Apache 01 is right now in this load balancer backend pool. So if I go into this backend pool, I have a machine uh, pool 01, and it can go to this can forget about what is happening. Just I tried creating, but the configuration got added, but the virtual machine didn't get created. So at this point of time, you know, to actually think at that this about this one, But if you see Apache 01 is there in this backend pool, it means officially like a request is being sent. If I take the load balancer front-end IP and I send that request, paste it in the browser, and automatically the request HTTP request is going right. It's an 80 port as per load balancing rule which we have in a load balancer. What does that load balancer rule says? If you are getting an 80 port request to a front end IP, then send that to the 80 port of the backend pool. And the 80 port of the backend pool right now, if you see it is nothing but this one, this machine. So 80 port in 80 port, it is having in this machine 80 port, we have Apache in it. So let's go and send a request from the front end IP configuration. So I'll copy this and I will send a request here. You see right now have this one. So even you guys can go and try with so and so specific IP address. Uh, but this, if you try to take it and paste it here, this is an HTTP request. See, and this is HTTP runs in on 80 port. So that is why how successfully we are routing as per load balancing rules. So I wanted to even add Apache in it, sorry, Nginx in it, but fortunately it's not happening. So let me retry. Meanwhile, pausing the recording. So it's not able to be created, guys. So one mistake which I have done is when I created a load balancer, I created a load balancer with a specific SKU, which is standard SKU, basic SKU. But if you are creating a load balancer with a standard one, we will not be facing these issues. Or you can resolve even if you're having a basic load balancer. What you have to do is you have to go inside the virtual machines, and when you're creating any of the virtual machines and adding it to a backend pool, ensure that you are selecting an availability set as an option here, and add into that same availability set the machines, and you will be in a position to add you will be in a position to create when you're choosing load balancer here as an option, you will be in a position to choose uh, that load balancer, and you can create your machines in that backend pool. So when I tried creating an Apache, it was not in that same availability set. And right now, when I'm creating another machine, it is not working out because I didn't choose while I was creating it. But if you can create one more, and I'll try to upload one more video where I try to create the machines in a same availability set, and you can utilize that. You can watch this both videos and understand what is the broader understanding about why we are encountering that kind of issue.